This is the first of a series developed by the Spinal Cord System of Care team at the NRH. Knowing as much as possible about your spinal cord injury will help you to learn or relearn everyday living skills so you can achieve the safest possible level of independence. Some of the medical terms were developed many centuries ago and may seem complicated, unfamiliar and impersonal. So please talk to your healthcare team about anything you don't understand or have questions about. Spinal cord injury rehabilitation. Rehabilitation for spinal cord injury aims to restore some or all of the physical abilities that you have lost due to injury, illness or disease. Rehabilitation also helps you to compensate for damage that cannot be repaired and to learn to manage the effects of injury, illness or disease. It does not reverse or undo damage, but it will help you restore and regain strength and ability to function well in your day-to-day life. It can take a long time to learn to manage the changes that happen as a result of a spinal cord injury or illness. Basic facts about spinal cord injury. A spinal cord injury is caused by damage to your spinal cord. Damage can be caused by a trauma, such as a fall, or by a medical condition, such as a tumour. Before learning more about injury to the spinal cord, the next section will describe how the spine and spinal cord work when they are not damaged. The spinal column. The spinal column is also referred to as the backbone. It is made up of bones called the vertebrae and the spinal cord itself. The 33 vertebrae are stacked on top of each other to make up 4 sections of the backbone. Each section of the backbone is given a name and each vertebra is given a number. The cervical area. 7 cervical vertebrae in the neck named C1 to C7. The thoracic area. 12 thoracic vertebrae in the upper back named T1 to T12. The lumbar area. 5 lumbar vertebrae in the back named L1 to L5. The sacrococcygeal area. 5 fused sacral vertebrae and 4 fused vertebrae that form the coccyx. At the bottom of the spinal cord is the cauda equina. This is a collection of nerves that look a bit like a horse's tail, which is where the name comes from. The spinal column begins in the neck and ends at the tailbone. It is strong and flexible and plays an important role in surrounding and protecting the spinal cord. Ligaments help to provide structure and stability as they hold individual vertebrae and groups of vertebrae together. Between each vertebra are softer pads called discs. These pads prevent the bones from rubbing together and work as shock absorbers for the spinal column. Muscles along the spinal column help to provide balance, stability and mobility. The spinal cord is a long structure of nerves like a tube which begins at the bottom of the brain stem, and ends at the base of the first lumbar vertebra, L1. It is here that the spinal cord branches into the cauda equina. The spinal cord is approximately the width of your little finger and is similar to a computer cable. It is a two-way communication network that sends messages to and from your brain and specific parts of your body. Spinal nerves come out from the spinal cord through gaps between each vertebra. Spinal nerves start in the spinal cord and carry motor, movement, sensory, feelings and reflexes from your body to the brain and from your brain to your body. The nervous system. The spinal cord is part of the nervous system. The nervous system is divided into 2 parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The brain and the spinal cord together form the central nervous system. The spinal nerves are part of the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system refers to the nerves outside the brain and spinal cord. The nervous system, including the brain as the control centre, helps control all body functions. Messages to and from the brain travel through the spinal cord and the spinal or peripheral nerves. Pairs of spinal nerves stretch out to each side of the body from the spinal cord through the gaps between each vertebra. Cerebrospinal fluid is a clear liquid that flows around the brain and spinal cord and acts like a cushion to protect them from injury. The names and numbers of the spinal nerves match up with the names and numbers of the vertebrae. The central nervous system has two parts: the somatic nervous system and the autonomic system. The somatic nervous system is responsible for starting and controlling the movements in your body. Some of the functions controlled by the somatic nervous system are movement, reflexes, and sensation. Movement. These signals tell the muscles in your arms, hands, fingers, legs, toes, chest, and other parts of the body how and when to move. Motor messages begin in the brain, travel through the spinal cord and out through the spinal nerves to the rest of the body. Reflexes. A reflex is a muscle movement caused by a signal that does not come from the brain. Reflex signals happen very quickly and do not have to reach the brain before the body reacts. Some body signals only need to reach the spinal cord. Some bladder and bowel emptying as well as spasms are caused by reflex actions. Sensation. Feelings of hot, cold, pain and pressure are called sensory messages. If you are sitting for a long time, pressure builds up in the area you are sitting on. Messages are then sent along nerve pathways from that area of increased pressure to the spinal cord and then to the brain. A message then passes back out from the brain through the spinal cord, telling you to move a little to relieve the pressure. The autonomic nervous system regulates your internal glands and organs. As the name suggests, this system automatically controls a variety of bodily functions, including bowel, bladder, heart rate and blood pressure, digestion, body temperature, sweating, shivering, sexual function. The autonomic nervous system is controlled by different parts of your spinal cord and brain. Spinal cord injury. Spinal cord injury occurs when there is damage to the spinal cord. Damage to the spinal cord can be called traumatic or non-traumatic. Traumatic injury is caused by a physical injury, for example an accident such as a fall, a car crash or a collision on your bike. Non-traumatic injury happens as a result of damage to your spinal cord for other reasons, such as loss of blood supply, a tumour or degeneration of the spinal bone. When a spinal cord injury occurs, communication between the brain and the body is blocked. After spinal cord injury or illness, messages below the level of injury are unable to get past the damage in the spinal cord. When you have a spinal cord injury, some or all of the following changes may happen: loss of movement or paralysis, loss of sensation, changes in bladder control, changes in bowel control, changes in sexual function, changes in breathing, spasms, changes in blood pressure, changes in heart rate, changes in body temperature. Depending on how you got your spinal cord injury and the type of injury, these changes may be temporary or permanent. Complications such as pressure injuries and pain can develop as a result of spinal cord injury and are known as secondary complications. Knowing as much as you can about your spinal cord injury and its consequences is the best way to prevent secondary complications developing. Describing your spinal cord injury. When speaking about your spinal cord injury, healthcare professionals will name the actual area of the spine which is damaged. For example, C4, meaning the damage happened to the fourth vertebra in the cervical part of the spinal column. Sometimes they will refer to two or more vertebrae, such as T7, T8. This is because the damage to the spinal column is often described as the damage which occurs between two vertebrae. For example, T7, T8 fracture dislocation, where the T8 bone might have been broken and as a result moved out of its normal position in relation to T7. Spinal cord injury is described in two important parts: level of injury and severity of injury. Level of injury. The neurological or nerve level describes where the changes start to occur in your body as a result of your spinal cord injury. For example, if your level of injury is T4, then your body, arms and trunk are normal as far as T4 around your nipples. Below that level, your body has changed. If you have broken a bone during your injury, the level of injury may not be the same as the level at which the bone is broken. Severity of injury. The second part of the description of your spinal cord injury is the ASIA, American Spinal Injuries Association, impairment scale. This scale, described by the letters A to E, tells how severe the injury is. An ASIA impairment scale A injury means there is no movement below the injury level. If you have an ASIA impairment scale B injury, then there are some sensations passing through the injury level as far as the area around your back passage. It is vital that the sensations are transmitted this far to confirm that your injury is ASIA scale B. If you have a small amount of movement as well as some sensations around your back passage, then it is called an ASIA impairment scale C injury. If you have a moderate or large amount of movement and sensation, then it is an ASIA impairment scale D injury. Finally, if there is full recovery of all movement and sensation, this is an ASIA impairment scale E injury. We rarely see ASIA impairment scale E injuries in rehabilitation. Levels of injury: cervical, tetraplegia, areas affected: neck muscles, shoulders, arms, wrists, hands, legs, chest muscles, bladder, bowel. Thoracic, paraplegia, areas affected: chest, abdomen, legs, bladder, bowel. Lumbar, paraplegia, areas affected: buttocks, legs, bladder, bowel. Sacral, areas affected: buttocks, groin, toes, bladder, bowel. An ASIA impairment scale A injury is also called a complete injury, while the term incomplete injury means an ASIA impairment scale B, C, or D. Why is it important to know my level of injury? Knowing as much as you can about your spinal cord injury will also help you to understand the complications that may arise from it. This will then help you to look out for and prevent complications, and seek medical assistance where necessary. It is also important that you know about your level of injury so that you can give this information to other healthcare professionals who look after you in the future. Spinal cord injury is quite rare, and it is therefore important that you can tell others about your care needs. This type of information will help a healthcare professional to understand more about your spinal cord injury and what sort of treatment, help or support you may need. Early management of spinal cord injury. In the acute hospital. In order to diagnose and identify the exact location of the fracture or dislocation in your spine, a CT scan or an MRI scan will be performed. The bones in your spinal column may not be stable, or a bone fragment may be pushing into the spinal cord. You may need surgery to stabilize the damaged bones of your spine. Surgery needed will depend on the type and level of injury. Metal plates and screws are used to stabilize the spine and prevent further damage to the spinal cord. Spinal shock is a temporary loss of all spinal reflex activity and autonomic disturbance below the level of injury. It resolves after a period of days, weeks, or occasionally months. Reversal of spinal shock is not the same as recovery from spinal cord injury.